There's something about the sea at night that makes you feel small, not just in body, but in soul. Out there, where the black water stretches to the edge of the earth, the waves seem to breathe, in and out, like some vast creature that's been alive since before there were ships to sail upon it. Imagine standing on a cliff with the wind clawing at your coat, the salt stinging your eyes, and far below the ocean foaming like the mouth of a restless giant. Now picture a lighthouse standing guard over that wildness, its beam sweeping the darkness like a watchful eye. And then, imagine that one day, the beam goes out, and when the relief crew comes to investigate, the keepers are simply gone. No bodies, no messages, no sign of where they went or why. This is the story of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse and the 3 men who vanished from it in the winter of 1900. The Flannan Isles lie some 20 miles off the coast of Scotland's Outer Hebrides, a small cluster of rocky outcrops, with Eyily Moor being the largest. There are no permanent residents, no gentle beaches, no shelter from the Atlantic's fury. Just jagged cliffs, steep slopes covered in coarse grass, and seabirds that wheel and cry overhead like restless spirits. Even on the calmest days, the sea around the Flannans is treacherous. In storms, it becomes a boiling, frothing chaos of water and wind. In 1899, a lighthouse was completed on Eyily Moor, perched high above the western approach, its white towers standing against the endless gray of the Atlantic. Its purpose was simple: to warn ships away from the cruel rocks that had claimed so many lives. The keepers lived there in rotation, 3 on duty at a time, 1 on leave, isolated for weeks, sometimes months. Supplies were brought in by ship when weather allowed. In the early days of December 1900, the 3 men stationed there were Thomas Marshall, Donald MacArthur, and James Ducate, the principal keeper. For the first weeks, everything seemed normal. Log entries noted the usual routine: lamp maintenance, weather observations, meals taken together. The light shone faithfully, its pulse cutting through the fog and spray. But then, on December 15th, a passing steamer called the Arctur noted something strange. The lighthouse's beam was dark. They reported it upon arrival in Leith, but rough weather delayed any immediate investigation. It wasn't until December 26th, and 11 days later, that the relief vessel Hesperus was able to make the crossing to Eyily Moor. Captain James Harvey and his crew expected to see the keepers waiting on the landing, eager for news from the mainland. But as they drew closer, there was no movement, no figure waving from the path, just the white tower against the winter sky, silent. Landing in a small boat, Joseph Moore, a relief keeper, made his way up the steep path to the lighthouse. The wind was sharp, the spray reaching even here, high on the cliffs. When Moore entered, he found the place eerily still. The kitchen table was set for a meal, plates, cutlery, and an overturned chair as if someone had left in a hurry. The clock on the wall had stopped. Searching the quarters, Moore discovered that 2 of the oilskin coats, heavy protective gear worn in storms, were missing, but 1 remained hanging on its peg. This suggested that one of the keepers had gone outside without it. An odd choice given the winter cold. The lighthouse logbook told a stranger tale still. The last entries, dated December 12th, described severe storms, worse than anything the men had experienced. One note recorded that James Ducate was very quiet and that Donald MacArthur, normally steady, was crying. Another mentioned that they had all prayed together, even though lighthouses were not supposed to indulge in such dramatics in their official records. And then on December 15th, the final entry: storm ended, sea calm, God is over all. But if the storm had ended, where had they gone? Outside, a search of the island revealed more clues and more questions. On the western landing stage, the iron railings were twisted and bent, as if by tremendous force. A supply box stored high on the cliffs had been smashed open. Ropes, normally kept in a crate, were strewn about, and far below on the rocks, they found evidence that waves had risen far higher than usual, even for a storm. The official conclusion, reached after inquiry, was that 2 of the men had gone down to secure equipment during the storm, and a sudden wave had swept them away. The third, seeing the danger, may have rushed to help without stopping to grab his coat and met the same fate. A tragic but simple accident. But for over a century, that tidy explanation has never quite satisfied everyone. Why would all 3 men leave the safety of the lighthouse at once in such conditions when their training emphasized that one must always remain inside to keep the light? If a wave had taken them, why were no bodies ever found, when wreckage and remains from other disasters often washed ashore? And what of the strange log entries, hinting at fear, uncharacteristic behavior, and that cryptic final line? Some suggest the answer lies not in the sea, but in the men themselves. Life on a lighthouse is hard. Long stretches of isolation, repetitive work, and the relentless sound of wind and surf. Cabin fever or a sudden quarrel could have driven one to violence. If tempers boiled over, perhaps an accident or a fight gone too far left them all lost. Others looked to superstition. The Flannan Isles were long considered eerie by the islanders of Lewis. Shepherds who grazed sheep there would never stay overnight, claiming the island was haunted. Old legends spoke of little people, spirits or fairies, who guarded the land. Some whisper that the keepers might have seen something in that storm, something not meant for human eyes, and followed it or fled from it. There's also the unsettling possibility of an intruder, a passing ship in distress, smugglers, or even someone seeking shelter could have landed. If so, perhaps what happened next left no survivors. The remoteness of Ilion Moor makes it impossible to know. And then there's the theory that seems almost too strange to be true: rogue waves. These massive, unpredictable walls of water, sometimes twice the height of the surrounding seas, can appear without warning, born of wind, current, and swell colliding in just the right way. One such wave could have risen from the black water, slamming into the rocks with enough force to sweep away even the most sure-footed men. The twisted railings and scattered supplies fit this picture. And if the men were caught off guard, it could explain the missing coats and the stopped clock, the moment when time itself seemed to freeze. Today, the lighthouse is automated. No keepers live there, no human eyes watch the horizon from its windows. But the Flannan Isles are still battered by the same relentless sea, still wrapped in the same mists, and still haunted, if not by spirits, then by the absence of answers. Sometimes I picture that last morning. The storm has passed. The air is sharp and cold. The sea still heaves with leftover swell, but the sky has opened, streaked with pale sunlight. The 3 men step outside, maybe for work, maybe for curiosity, maybe because they sense something unusual on the shore below. The wind carries the smell of salt and kelp. Waves crash far below, and then something happens. A shout, a rush of movement, a sound that's not quite like any wave they've heard before. And in an instant, the island is silent again, the lighthouse beams still, the tea cooling on the table. We'll never truly know what took Thomas Marshall, Donald MacArthur, and James Ducat from their lonely post. The sea does not give back all its secrets. Perhaps they were victims of nature's raw power. Perhaps of something darker, stranger. Perhaps, and this is the most unsettling thought of all, they simply vanished into that vast breathing wilderness, as so many have before. Thank you for braving the wind and waves with me tonight. Tell me, if you were standing in that lighthouse after weeks of isolation and storms, and you saw something strange on the rocks below, would you go out to investigate, or would you stay behind safe in the light? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please like, comment, and share. It truly helps keep these stories alive.